When I was 10 years old, I sat on the back porch of our house watching my dad throw a football with my cousin Marcus in the backyard. The sun was setting behind the oak trees, casting long shadows across the grass, and my dad was laughing, really laughing, the kind of deep, genuine laugh that made his whole face light up. I sat there on those wooden steps, my chin resting on my knees, wondering why he never laughed like that when he was with me. Maybe I was just being sensitive. Maybe he was simply enjoying time with his nephew. But that hollow feeling in my chest never went away. It grew heavier with each passing year, like a stone I carried everywhere I went. It was not until I turned 18 that I finally understood why. And that truth shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Before we begin this journey together, drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from today. If you have ever felt like an outsider in your own home, tap that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to the house where my story started. My name is Penelope, and I grew up in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. Our house was a two-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch that my mother used to fill with potted flowers every spring. From the street, it looked like the perfect American home. But perfection is often just a pretty mask, hiding something broken underneath. My father, Gerald, was 52 years old when I was in high school. He had built a successful construction engineering company from nothing, starting as a laborer right out of college, and working his way up until he owned the whole operation. Everyone in town respected him. They saw a self-made man, a pillar of the community, someone who had achieved the American dream through hard work and determination. They did not see what happened behind closed doors. My mother, Linda, was the heart of our family. She worked part-time at the local library, surrounded by books she loved, and spent her remaining hours making our house feel like a home. She baked cookies on rainy afternoons, helped me with homework at the kitchen table, and tucked me in every night with a kiss on my forehead. When I think about unconditional love, I think about her. I was their only child, born just 3 months after their wedding day. As a kid, I never questioned the timing. It was only later that I understood what it meant. My parents had gotten married because my mother was pregnant. In my father's eyes, I was the reason his life had taken an unexpected turn. Everything changed when I was 12. My mother started feeling tired all the time. She lost weight without trying. Then came the diagnosis: breast cancer stage 3. The doctors tried everything: chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. For 8 months, I watched my mother fight with everything she had. And then, on a cold February morning, she was gone. I stood at her funeral in a black dress that was slightly too big, holding my father's hand. I remember thinking that maybe now things would be different between us. Maybe grief would bring us closer together. Instead, the opposite happened. My father retreated into himself, and the distance between us grew into a canyon I could not cross. Around that time, my Aunt Diane moved closer to our family. She was my father's younger sister, a widow herself. Her husband had died in a car accident when my cousin Marcus was only 5 years old. My father insisted that she and Marcus relocate to a house just 3 blocks from ours. He said it was so he could help take care of them. At the time, I believed him. Marcus was 2 years older than me, a freshman in high school when I was still in 7th grade. He had sandy brown hair, an easy smile, and a natural charm that made everyone like him instantly. Adults adored him. Teachers praised him. My father absolutely idolized him. After my mother passed away, Marcus started spending more and more time at our house. He would come over after school, stay for dinner, sometimes even sleep in the guest room on weekends. At first, I appreciated the company. I was lonely and grieving, and having someone around felt better than the silence that had swallowed our home. But then I started noticing things. On my 13th birthday, my father gave me a bicycle. It was not new. He had found it at a garage sale and spent a weekend fixing it up in the garage. I thanked him and tried to be grateful. 2 weeks later, without any special occasion, my father bought Marcus a brand new laptop. The latest model, expensive and sleek. Marcus needed it for school, my father explained. He needed to stay competitive. I brought home straight A grades on my report card. My father glanced at it, nodded once, and said good job before turning back to the television. When Marcus brought home a report card with mostly B grades, my father took him out for ice cream to celebrate. Marcus had overcome so much, he said. Marcus was working so hard despite losing his father at such a young age. I had lost my mother too, but somehow that was different. Dinner time became a ritual of exclusion. My father would sit at the head of the table and spend the entire meal talking to Marcus. He asked about school, about friends, about sports, about Marcus's plans for the future. Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter and genuine interest. When my father turned to me, the questions were brief and obligatory. How was your day? Fine. Good. And that was the end of it. I began to feel like a ghost haunting my own home, present but unseen, there but forgotten. I would sit at that dinner table pushing food around my plate, watching my father light up whenever Marcus spoke, and I would wonder what I had done to deserve this. Aunt Diane saw what was happening. I could tell by the way she looked at me sometimes, her eyes full of something that looked like guilt mixed with sadness. But she never intervened. She never pulled my father aside and told him to treat his own child better. Her silence felt like agreement, like she believed Marcus deserved more too. I spent years asking myself what was wrong with me. Was I too quiet? Too awkward? Too much of a reminder of my mother of a marriage my father had never truly wanted? I did not have answers. I only had questions and a growing sense that I would never be enough for the man who was supposed to love me unconditionally. The truth, when it finally came, arrived on a cold December night, and it was worse than anything I had ever imagined. The winter I turned 18 was supposed to be exciting. I was a senior in high school working on college applications, dreaming about the future. I had always wanted to be an architect. There was something magical about the idea of designing buildings, of creating structures that would stand for decades, maybe centuries. I imagined myself sketching blueprints, walking through construction sites, watching my visions become reality. I applied to the architecture program at Ohio State University and got accepted with a partial scholarship. It covered about half my tuition, which was incredible. I was proud of myself, proud of what I had achieved through my own hard work. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. Then came the night that changed everything. It was mid-December, just a few days before Christmas break. I could not sleep. My mind was racing with thoughts about college, about leaving home, about starting fresh somewhere. No one knew me as the quiet kid whose father barely acknowledged her existence. I went downstairs around midnight to get a glass of water. As I passed my father's study, I heard his voice through the partially open door. He was on the phone speaking in a low tone that suggested he did not want to be overheard. I should have kept walking. I should have minded my own business. But something made me stop. Something made me lean closer to listen. I never wanted that kid my father was saying. Linda got pregnant by accident. We had only been dating for a few months, and suddenly she is telling me she is having a baby. What was I supposed to do? I married her because it was the right thing to do. But Penelope was never part of my plan. If she had never been born, my whole life would have been different. My hand found the wall, steadying myself as the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. My father continued talking, unaware that his words were destroying me on the other side of the door. Marcus is different. Diane is son, and Diane is the most important person in the world to me besides myself. When I look at Marcus, I see potential. I see someone worth investing in. Penelope is just a reminder of a mistake I made when I was young and stupid. I do not remember walking back to my room. I do not remember climbing into bed. I just remember lying there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me break into pieces too small to ever put back together. A mistake. That is what I was. That is all I had ever been. I did not cry that night. I did not scream or confront my father or do any of the things a normal person might do upon hearing such devastating words. I just lay there numb as every painful memory from my childhood suddenly made perfect sense. In the days that followed, I made a decision. I would not tell my father what I had heard. What would be the point? He had made his feelings clear. Confronting him would only give him the satisfaction of knowing he had hurt me, and I refused to give him that power. Instead, I buried the truth deep inside myself and focused on the only thing that mattered: getting out. 3 months later, both Marcus and I received our final college decisions. I had been accepted to Ohio State for architecture with my partial scholarship. Marcus had gotten into a private business school in California, a prestigious institution with tuition costs exceeding $50,000 per year. My father called a family meeting at dinner to discuss the plans. I still remember the way he straightened his shoulders, the proud look on his face as he made his announcement. "I have decided to pay for Marcus's entire college education," he declared. "Tuition, room, and board books, spending money, everything. He has worked hard and he deserves this opportunity to succeed." Marcus grinned, thanking my father profusely. Aunt Diane beamed with pride and gratitude. Then my father turned to me. "As for you, Penelope, you already have a scholarship. You can figure out the rest yourself. It is time you learned how to be independent." I did the math quickly in my head. Even with my scholarship, I would still need about $15,000 per year to cover the remaining tuition plus housing, food, and books. My father was willing to spend $50,000 a year on Marcus without a second thought, but he expected me to somehow come up with $15,000 on my own. Aunt Diane cleared her throat nervously. "Gerald," she said softly, "is that entirely fair? They are both young people starting their lives." My father waved his hand dismissively. "Penelope is 18 now. She needs to learn that the world does not hand you things for free. This will be good for her." I looked at him across the table, the man who had given me life but never love, the man who saw me as nothing more than an unfortunate consequence of a youthful mistake. And for the first time, I did not feel hurt. I did not feel sad. I just felt empty. "I understand, Dad," I said, my voice calm and steady. That night alone in my room, I made a plan. Not a plan for revenge or confrontation. A plan for survival. A plan to build a life that would never depend on Gerald and his conditional affection. If he wanted me to be independent, then independent I would be. And someday, I promised myself I would prove that the mistake he regretted so deeply was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. I let go of my dream of becoming an architect. I could not afford Ohio State without help, and I refused to drown in student debt for decades just to prove a point. Instead, I enrolled in a community college about 20 minutes from my father's house. They had a 2-year program in information technology that was affordable and practical. It was not what I had imagined for myself, but it was a path forward. Within a month of graduating high school, I moved out. I found a tiny room for rent in a house shared by 3 other people. The room was barely big enough for a twin bed and a small desk, but it was mine. The rent was $400 a month, which was just about manageable if I was careful. To support myself, I took on 3 part-time jobs. From 6 in the morning until noon, I waited tables at a diner near the highway. The pay was minimum wage plus tips, which on good days amounted to about $60. From 1 until 5 in the afternoon, I delivered packages for a local courier service, driving all over the city in my beat-up Honda Civic. And from 10 at night until 2 in the morning, I worked the register at a 24-hour convenience store. I slept maybe 4 or 5 hours a night, often less. I ate cheap food-skipped meals when money was tight, and learned to ignore the constant exhaustion that settled into my bones like a permanent resident. The first year was the hardest thing I have ever done. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the weight of everything felt too heavy to carry. One night in late October, after working a double shift, my bicycle broke down in the rain about 5 miles from home. I did not have enough money for an Uber, and the buses had stopped running. So I walked, pushing my broken bike through puddles, the rain soaking through my jacket until I was shivering uncontrollably. Halfway home, I stopped under a bus shelter and sat down on the cold metal bench. And for the first time since that December night when I heard my father on the phone, I cried. I cried for my mother, who would have never let any of this happen. I cried for the childhood I never had, for the father who saw me as a burden. I cried until there was nothing left inside me except a dull, empty ache. But when morning came, I got up. I went to work. I went to class. I kept moving forward because stopping was not an option. During my second semester, I met someone who changed my life. Mr. Thompson was a retired software engineer who taught programming at the community college. He was in his 60s with gray hair and thick glasses, and he had this way of explaining complex concepts that made them seem simple. He saw something in me that I could not see in myself. "You have a gift for this," he told me one day after class. "You think logically. You solve problems creatively. Have you ever considered pursuing software development seriously?" I had not. But Mr. Thompson believed in me, and that belief was enough to plant a seed of possibility in my mind. He connected me with an internship at a small tech startup downtown. It did not pay anything, but it gave me real experience and introduced me to people who would later become invaluable connections. I worked that unpaid internship on top of my 3 other jobs in my full course load. I honestly do not know how I survived that year. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the burning need to prove that my father was wrong about me. Whatever it was, it kept me going when everything inside me wanted to stop. Meanwhile, I watched Marcus's life unfold on social media like a highlight reel of everything I would never have. He posted photos of his apartment in California, a sleek one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He drove a new sports car that my father had bought him as a college gift. He went on spring break trips to Mexico summer vacations, to Europe weekend getaways to Las Vegas with his friends. My father visited Marcus at least 3 times a year. They posted pictures together at fancy restaurants, at football games, at golf courses. Marcus changed his major twice, switching from business to marketing to communications, extending his graduation timeline by at least 2 years. My father did not seem to care. The checks kept coming. Aunt Diane called me occasionally, her voice heavy with guilt. She apologized for how things had turned out, said she wished she could do something to help. I told her it was not her fault, and I meant it. I did not blame her for my father's choices. I did not even blame Marcus for accepting what was freely offered to him. My anger, if I still had any, was reserved for one person alone. And even that anger was fading, replaced by a cold determination to succeed without him. 4 years after leaving my father's house, I graduated with my associate degree in information technology. I had no debt, a solid resume built on real-world experience, and a job offer from the startup where I had interned. They had grown significantly since I first joined them, and they wanted me as a full-time junior developer. The salary was modest, but decent. Enough to rent my own apartment, a real one-bedroom with a kitchen and a living room and windows that let in actual sunlight. Enough to buy groceries without counting every penny. Enough to breathe. I remember sitting in that empty apartment on my first night there, looking around at the bare walls and the secondhand furniture, and feeling something I had not felt in years: pride. I had built this myself. No one had given it to me. No one could take it away. And somewhere across the country, the golden child was about to learn that gifts given freely are often valued the least. 5 years after I walked out of my father, his house, Marcus's carefully constructed world came crashing down. It started with whispers. Aunt Diane mentioned during one of our phone calls that Marcus had been asking my father for extra money lately, more than usual. His expenses seemed to be growing, but he was vague about where the money was going. Then the truth came out. Marcus had developed a gambling addiction. It had started small, just some online poker with friends, a few sports bets here and there. But it had spiraled out of control over the years, until he was betting thousands of dollars at a time, chasing losses that only grew larger. By the time my father discovered what was happening, Marcus owed nearly $80,000 to various creditors. He had been lying for years, inventing tuition increases and living expenses that never existed, funneling my father's money directly into his addiction. My father was devastated. The nephew, he had invested everything in the surrogate son he had chosen over his own daughter, had been deceiving him all along. Their confrontation was apparently explosive. Marcus denied everything at first, then blamed his addiction on stress, then finally admitted the full scope of his debts. Within weeks, Marcus disappeared. He moved to another state to escape his creditors and cut off contact with everyone, including Aunt Diane. She was heartbroken. Despite everything, he was still her son, and she did not know if he was safe or even alive. Around the same time my father's business began to struggle. The economy had taken a downturn, and several of his biggest projects fell through. Worse, he had made some bad investments over the years, putting money into ventures that never paid off. His savings dwindled, his company shrank. The empire he had built over decades started to crumble. His health declined too. Years of stress, poor diet, and neglecting himself had taken their toll. He was diagnosed with severe diabetes and early-stage heart disease. The doctors warned him that he needed to make major lifestyle changes or face serious consequences. Aunt Diane was too old and frail to care for him alone. And Marcus was gone, vanished into whatever new life he had built for himself, far away from the mess he had created. That left me, the mistake, the burden, the child my father had never wanted. One evening my phone rang. It was Aunt Diane, her voice shaking with emotion. "Penelope," she said, "your father had a stroke, a mild one, but he is in the hospital. He is stable now, but he has been asking for you. He wants to see you." I did not answer right away. I sat in my apartment, the phone pressed against my ear, staring out the window at the city lights below. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Memories of sitting on that back porch watching him laugh with Marcus. Memories of report cards, barely acknowledged birthdays. Forgotten years of feeling invisible in my own home. "Will you come?" Aunt Diane asked. I told her I needed time to think. For 3 days I wrestled with myself. Part of me wanted to ignore the call entirely, to let my father face the consequences of his choices without my help. He had made it clear 18 years ago that I was not the child he wanted. Why should I be the one to save him now? But another part of me, the part shaped by my mother, is love and kindness, could not walk away. Not because he deserved my compassion, but because I deserved to be the kind of person who showed compassion anyway. On the 4th day, I drove to the hospital. The man lying in that bed was not the father I remembered. Gerald had always been imposing, tall and broad-shouldered, with a commanding presence that filled every room he entered. The person before me was thin and frail, his skin pale and papery, his white hair limp against the pillow. Machines beeped steadily around him, monitoring his heart rate, his oxygen levels, his fragile hold on life. When he saw me walk through the door, his eyes filled with tears. "Penelope," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You came." I stood at the foot of his bed, keeping my distance. "I am sorry," he continued, the words tumbling out like he had been holding them back for years. "I was wrong. About everything. I wasted my whole life loving the wrong people, investing in the wrong things. I pushed away the only person who ever really needed me, and I do not expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I am so, so sorry." I looked at this broken man, this shadow of the father who had hurt me so deeply for so long. I expected to feel satisfaction, vindication, maybe even joy at seeing him brought so low. But I did not feel any of those things. I just felt tired. Karma had done its work without any help from me. Life had balanced the scales in ways I could never have orchestrated. I did not need revenge. I never had. The universe had taken care of everything. I did not forgive my father that day. Forgiveness is not a switch you can flip just because someone says the right words. It is a process, a journey, something that has to be earned through consistent action over time. But I did not abandon him either. I helped arrange his medical care, found a reputable nursing service, and made sure his bills were paid. I visited when I could, which was not as often as he probably wanted, but more than he deserved. Slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild something resembling a relationship. For the first time in his life, my father tried to know me. He asked about my work, my interests, my hopes for the future. He listened when I talked, really listened in a way he never had before. He learned that I had worked my way up to senior software engineer, that I owned my own apartment, that I was engaged to a wonderful woman named Sarah, who made me laugh every single day. He cried when I told him about the years I had struggled, the nights I went hungry, the rain-soaked walk, pushing a broken bicycle through empty streets. He said he was proud of me, and for the first time I actually believed him. It was too little too late in many ways. You cannot undo decades of neglect with a few years of effort, but it was something. And after everything I had been through, something felt like more than I ever expected to receive. Today, I am 32 years old. I have a career I love, a home I built myself, and a future filled with possibility. Sarah and I are getting married next spring in a small ceremony, surrounded by the people who actually showed up for us when it mattered. My father will be there if his health allows, not because he earned a place at my wedding, but because I have chosen to let go of the anger that once consumed me. Marcus eventually resurfaced. He got help for his addiction, paid off his debts over many years, and rebuilt his life somewhere in the Midwest. We are not close, but we exchange messages occasionally. I do not hate him. I never did. He was just another person caught up in my father's dysfunction, shaped by favoritism he did not ask for. Aunt Diane passed away 2 years ago, peacefully in her sleep. I was with her at the end, holding her hand. She apologized one last time for not doing more to protect me when I was young. I told her I understood, and I did. Looking back on everything I have learned, a few things I want to share with you. Sometimes the people who refuse to love us give us the greatest gift of all. They give us the strength to stand on our own 2 feet. If my father had supported me, if he had paid for my education and handed me everything I needed, would I be who I am today? I honestly do not know. But I do know that every struggle made me stronger. Every obstacle taught me something. Every tear I cried watered the seeds of resilience that eventually grew into the life I have now. Karma is not about revenge. Karma is simply balance. The universe has a way of correcting itself over time. You do not have to do anything except live with integrity, work hard, and treat people well. Everything else sorts itself out eventually. And family is not defined by blood. Family is the people who choose you, who show up for you, who love you not because they have to, but because they want to. I found my real family in friends who supported me through my darkest days, and mentors who saw potential in me when I could not see it myself, and in Sarah, who loves me exactly as I am. If you are watching this and you have ever felt like someone is a mistake, if you have ever felt invisible or unloved or unworthy, please hear me. Your value is not determined by how others treat you. Your value is determined by how you treat yourself. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of respect. And if the people around you cannot see that, it is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their blindness. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories like this one. And share this video with someone who might need a reminder that they are not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope my story gave you something useful, whether that is comfort, perspective, or simply the knowledge that better days are possible no matter how dark things seem right now. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. And remember, you are not a mistake. You never were. Until next time.